A very good day to Dr. Soon. My name is Muhammad Fidos bin Ghazali and we are from Group Pi, and today we will be talking about what actually determines household expenditure in Malaysia. There are many reasons that influence household expenditure in Malaysia, but in today's case study, we will be talking about two factors that might influence household expenditure, which are household income and inflation rate in Malaysia. So without wasting any time, let's go.
So, what is household expenditure? In simple terms, household expenditure refers to the total amount of money that households spend on goods and services within a specific period. This includes spending on essentials like food, housing, transportation, education, healthcare, and etc. Household expenditure is an important indicator of economic activity because it reflects consumption patterns, purchasing power, and the financial well-being of families. When households spend more, it can drive economic growth, while reduced spending may signal financial challenges or economic downturns. So, what about income? It comes from various sources like salaries, profits, or dividends. Income is very important and vital for meeting expenses and achieving financial goals. Meanwhile, inflation rate is the rate at which the general price level of goods and services rises over time, reducing the purchasing power. This means you need more money to buy the same thing. Little inflation is good in a growing economy, but high inflation and deflation can cause problems.
Analyzing the determinant of household expenditure and the role of income and inflation in Malaysia. The problem statement first is importance of household expenditure. Household expenditure reflect consumption patterns, purchasing power, and financial well-being, playing a vital role in Malaysian economic activity, especially given the significant religion disparities. So our key determinants are household income and inflation rate are critical factors that influence the spending behavior. With higher income can cause higher consumption, and at the same time can cause inflation that can reduce the purchasing power. So this study seeks to examine the correlation between household expenditure, income, and inflation rate in Malaysia. There are three objectives in our study. First is to examine the relationship between household income and household expenditure in Malaysia. Second is to analyze the impact inflation rate on household expenditure. Third is to investigate the interaction between household income and inflation in shaping household expenditure. Introduction part. Household expenditure in Malaysia reflect consumption patterns, purchasing power, and financial well-being shaped by religion difference in income, living costs, and inflation. Second is to income and inflation significantly influence the household expenditure. With higher income can cause higher consumption, at the same time can reduce the purchasing power. So this study examines how household income and inflation influence the expenditure patterns across Malaysian state using 2019 and 2022 data from Department of Statistics Malaysia.
So let's move to the research methodology part, which we collect the data from Department of Statistics Malaysia. We also conduct the data preparation and cleaning using Microsoft Excel, and we do the model specification, which include the assumption of linear regression such as multicollinearity, linearity, homoscedasticity, and also the normality of residuals. So we use the estimation technique using the ordinary least square by using the software of eViews, and we also conduct the diagnostic test, which includes multicollinearity test, autocorrelation test, homoscedasticity test, and the normality test. Based on the result of the analysis, we interpret the coefficient to assess the impact of household income and inflation rate to household expenditure. We also provide some policy recommendation for the policymakers to explain this model relevance, and some policy recommendation to improve household welfare. But there is some limitation with the data availability, model assumption, and the external factors that might influence our model. So as we can see here, this is our econometric model, which include the general function and the theoretical function. The indicators for our dependent and independent variables are beta 0 is equals to the constant term, beta 1 is equals to income, which indicates the median gross monthly income in Ringgit Malaysia. IR is equals to beta 2, which indicates that the inflation rate in percentage, and our dependent variables is Y is equals to expend, which indicates the expenditure of household consumption expenditure, also measured in Ringgit Malaysia, and the epsilon later is the error term. So based on the estimated econometric model, we got the value of beta 0 is equals to 503.2946, which indicates the intercept of the regression model. So this value represents the expected value of household consumption expenditure when both household income and inflation rate are 0. So the value of beta 1 is equals to 0.483492, which indicates that if there is an increase of 1 ringgit in the gross monthly income, the household consumption expenditure increased by approximately 0.483 ringgit while holding the inflation rate constant. And for the beta 2 value, we got the value of 189.1102, which indicates that every 1% increase in the inflation rate will also increase the household consumption expenditure by approximately 189.11 ringgit while holding the income constant. So this positive relationship of household expenditure and inflation rate might be due to demand pull inflation, because the assumption of increase in the consumption expenditure will also increase the price level. So for the goodness of it, we got the value of R squared is equals to 0.9171, which indicates that 91.71% of the variation in the household consumption expenditure is explained by the independent variables in our model, and the value for our adjusted R squared is 0.9144, which is slightly lower than the R squared, but is considered still very high. So the model is well specified, meaning that the independent variables such as the household income and inflation rate are relevant and explain the majority for the variability in the consumption expenditure without adding any unnecessary predictors.
To continue with the analysis, which will be further explained by the diagnostic test and the significant test, first I will start explaining the normality test, Jack-Bera test. As we can see on the slide, we will obtain a residual histogram and summary statistics for median household consumption expenditure. Our H null is residuals are normally distributed, and our H alternative is residuals are not normally distributed. From this test, we obtained that the Jack-Bera is 0.059698 and the probability is 0.970592, which is much greater than the significance level 0.05. As a result, we fail to reject H null because there is insufficient evidence to conclude that the residuals are not normally distributed. The second test is multicollinearity test, variance effect factor (VIF). The centered VIF values for both variables income and IR are 1.240410, which is well below the common thresholds of 5 or 10, typically used to indicate significant multicollinearity. These low values suggest that there is little to no multicollinearity between the independent variables in the model. As a result, the regression coefficients for income and IR are not inflated, and their estimation remains stable and reliable. This allows us to interpret their effects on the dependent variable with confidence. On the other hand, the uncentered VIF values for income is 12.11967, for IR is 11.40303, and C is 12.78370 are higher. This is expected because uncentered VIF considers the intercept in the calculation, which can lead to larger values. However, uncentered VIF is not typically used for evaluating multicollinearity, so these values are less relevant in this context. The third test is the heteroscedasticity test, the Bruch-Pagan test. Our H null is the residuals have constant variance, homoscedasticity, or there is no heteroscedasticity in the regression model. Meanwhile, our H alternative is the residuals do not have constant variance, heteroscedasticity, or there is evidence of heteroscedasticity in the regression model. The p-value for the F statistic is 0.702232, which is much greater than the common significance level of 0.05. This indicates that there is insufficient evidence to reject the H null of homoscedasticity, suggesting that the residuals have a constant variance and there is no heteroscedasticity in the regression model. Lastly, the heteroscedasticity test, White test. Our H null is the residuals are homoscedastic, constant variance. The H alternative is the residuals are heteroscedastic, non-constant variance. Probability from the F statistics 0.940073 is much higher than the significant level of 0.05. This means we fail to reject H null, indicating no evidence of heteroscedasticity in the model. To move on with autocorrelation, the Rubin-Watson-Lee test, our H null is there is no first order autocorrelation in the residuals. This means P is equal to 0. Meanwhile, our H alternative is first order autocorrelation in the residuals. Positive autocorrelation means P is more than 0, and negative autocorrelation means that P is less than 0. Our sample size is 32, and the number of predictors is K equals to 2, including income and inflation rate. Our lower critical value, DL, is 1.29 and upper critical value is DU, which is 1.5 at the significance level of 0.05. To make the decision, first we must find the range which is between DU and 4 minus DU, which is 1.5, and 4 minus 1.5, which is equivalent to 2.5. Since Durbin-Watson stat obtained is 1.743-37 is between 1.5 and 2.5, we fail to reject H null because there is insufficient evidence to conclude that there is first order autocorrelation in the residuals. Next, for the second autocorrelation test is Bruce-Godfrey LM test. Our H null is that there is no serial correlation in the residuals up to the specified number of lags, which is 2. Our H alternative is that there is serial correlation in the residuals, at least for one lag. Our H alternative is Pi is not equal to 0 for at least one I where I is equal to 1 or 2. It can be P1 is not equal to 0 or P2 is not equal to 0 or both. Based on the figure, the probability for F227 is 0.2012 and the probability for chi square 2 is 0.1666. Since both P values are greater than 0.05, we fail to reject the H null. This suggests that there is no evidence of serial correlation in the residuals up to 2 lags. The model does not show significant autocorrelation in this test. Our final diagnostic test is the Ramsey reset test. Our H null is the model is correctly specified. Meanwhile, our H alternative is the model is misspecified. Both the probability of the T statistics and the F statistic is 0.5610. The probability of the likelihood ratio is 0.5306. Since the P values are all greater than the common significance levels of 0.05, we fail to reject the H null because there is insufficient evidence that the model is misspecified. This indicates that there is no strong evidence of omitted variables and the model does not suffer from the functional form misspecification.
For the next part of this presentation, I will present to you about the policy recommendation based on the finding of this result. So, this particular study highlights the critical roles of household income and inflation in determining household expenditure in Malaysia. As you can see from the result, household income exhibits a significant positive relationship with expenditure, so this reflects its role as the enabler of consumption. On the other hand, inflation shows a positive association with the expenditure, which suggests the household is adapting to the consuming and inelastic nature of essential goods. This result suggests that we need targeted policies to address the disparities in income and inflation. So, based on the findings, we propose the following to address the key issues. Since the data reveals significant variability in household income across Malaysian states, which ranging from RM3,563 ringgit to 10,549 ringgit and a standard deviation of 2,080 ringgit and 32 cents, we need to address regional income inequality, as such disparities contribute to uneven consumption patterns and hinder equitable economic development. So, the policy should include income redistribution program, implement progressive taxation system and expand cash transfer program to support low-income households, particularly in economically disadvantaged states. For example, targeted aid similar to bantuan sara hidup could alleviate financial pressure on low-income groups. Besides that, we should focus on job creation in undeserved regions by encouraging investments in high employment regions through incentives for industry like manufacturing and agriculture to boost household income levels. Skills training and education also will help. We should expand programs like TVET Malaysia to equip individuals with skills that enhance employability in high-paying sector. Additionally, we should also manage inflation. Inflation significantly impacts household expenditure with 1% rise in inflation, resulting in 189 ringgit and 11 cents increase in spending. The data indicates rates ranging from 1% to 7.8%, highlighting its varied regional effects. So the policy should include price stabilization measures. The government should introduce or enhance price control mechanism on essential goods like food and fuel to cushion the effect of inflation on low-income households. Policies key to skema kawalan harga musim perayaan can be institutionalized year-round for basic communities. Besides that, monetary policy adjustments should be made. Collaboration with Bank Negara Malaysia is needed to maintain low and stable inflation rates through interest rate adjustments and prudent monetary policies. Lastly, subsidy reforms are a must. We should consider targeted subsidies for essential goods to minimize unintended benefits for high-income groups while safeguarding low-income households. For future research, we should expand the data since the current data is only from 2019-2022, which may not fully capture the long-term or impact of global economic shock such as COVID-19 pandemic. Also, other factors such as education levels, employment status, and urbanization, which also influence household expenditure, were not included in the model. And we should also expand the scope for future research to incorporate panel data analysis to explore the trends over time and include additional independent variables such as government subsidies and household debt. So in conclusion, this study highlights the critical roles of income and inflation in shaping household expenditure, in which both shows positive association with household expenditure. And these findings offer a valuable insight for policymakers to tackle the issue for improving our overall economic welfare. That's all from us. Thank you.